My guest at this time most recently directed the Nick Gage versus Jon Moxley GCW Countdown Special. He's also one of the latest entrants into the GCW Deathmatch Hall of Fame class of 2021. It is Sick Nick Mondo. Nick, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with me here today.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Congratulations. I haven't talked to you since you got put into the Deathmatch Hall of Fame. I thought that was really cool. What was that like for you getting that respect there from GCW Deathmatch community?
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, they brought me out in June, and that was surprisingly a really nice time. I mean, not that I didn't expect it to be that way, but I was just surprised that so many of the wrestlers were there. It was just a really cool show of respect. And I really like the way, they all came up and had some words to say when they inducted Eugene, who has built deathmatch weapons for so many years, helped construct Cage of Deaths and things of that sort. But it was just a really fun, kind of a warm event and a good turnout too. I was a little worried that it would be boring or something like that. I appreciated it, but people seemed to really enjoy it. And so, man, that was a good time. Yeah.
It's amazing to me how tight knit the deathmatch, like the guys that really take it seriously. It's amazing how tight knit that is. And how could that be boring? I know what that community looks like. There isn't a boring person in the bunch. I think if there was like 10 seconds of silence, somebody would cut themselves in the forehead just to kind of lighten the mood. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
I guess I just figured was this before or after? I think it was after the Tournament of Survival show. You know what I mean? It's just like, after all that, are we going to sit down and listen to people talk? You know what I mean? I just maybe my own, low self-esteem talking or something. But I was just like, gosh, I hope this isn't boring for people. But it was a really fun time, so I was glad.
Well, cool. Well, it's great to see you getting your flowers for the great work you did in the community, man. Like, it's so fun getting to go back and watch like some of your stuff. Like, I see you now and everybody's like, oh, nice, legitimate film director, Matt Burns. And there was like this whole other life you lived before helping everybody look so professional these days. You obviously, like I said, did this countdown special. I watched it today. Kicks ass. I encourage everybody to go check it out online. Nick Gage, Jon Moxley. You get really into the history between these two guys. What does this match mean to you, Nick? What does it mean to you that this is going to be getting the spotlight this Saturday night?
Well, I've been working with Jon Moxley for a few years now, doing videos for him. And I was at the David Arquette match that when Nick Gage wrestled David Arquette in Los Angeles in 2018. Man, time flies. Yeah, that was, I guess, like almost 3 years ago. And I said to Nick, like, there are a few guys who I'm just like itching to work with, to make something with. And I said, you're one of them. And he said, please, man, just like anything you want to do. If you want to cover my past in prison, like, let's do it. Like, and so this was our chance. And so when those two first faced off, Moxley and Gage, I think it was March of this year, I didn't know that was going to happen. And truth be told, I don't get that excited about wrestling these days, but GCW has really been capturing my interest. But when that face-off happened, my jaw dropped, and I am so excited for this match. I knew their history, and immediately I started talking like, okay, this is the one. We need to make something for this. And so Jon was on board, Gage was on board, and I talked to Brett, and he was like, yeah, okay, it's a little early. And then I was out in June for the Deathmatch Hall of Fame, and then the discussion started picking up again. And so yeah, this is a very exciting match. Guys who have been around a long time, but I would say they're both peaking in their ability to just, present themselves in the ring and to bring their whole gimmicks together with confidence and with identity. And so this is a moment in time, and it's very exciting.
Well, it's interesting because, deathmatch wrestling has, become, I hate to say maybe more embraced or accepted. Maybe those are the right words, in the community now. I'm sure that you know what it was like, the stigma attached to deathmatch wrestling, as you were a part of it. Like, this is one of the most hyped wrestling matches, period, in the world right now, and it's a death match. Like, what does that what does that mean to you that like deathmatch wrestling's kind of reached this place where you can just present it side by side with like great lucha action, women's action, all that kind of stuff?
Something to keep in mind, and I hope more of the current guys take note. I know there's a lot of really charismatic wrestlers, but the thing is, both Nick Gage and Jon Moxley are every bit as much about their gimmicks, their presentation, their promos. Even though Nick is just pretty raw and pretty hard edged, he's good at what he does on the mic, and he is intense, and he gets that crowd excited. And so I feel like we're at a point in time where people have seen so much in death matches that the hardcore fan base is kind of desensitized, and the mainstream fan base, it's too much for them. They're not going to want to watch it, and I don't blame them. So I feel like these guys really bring the package together well. Keep in mind, they have 20 plus year careers. They are smart. I know these are frightening, dangerous men, but they're also thinking long term. They know how to take care of themselves. They get beat up, banged up, but like they're smart, and so they're also businessmen. Nick Gage has T-shirt deals like in Hot Topic stores across the U.S. now, in malls, and another store I can't remember what. But so I'm just saying these are very special performers beyond just deathmatch wrestlers, and I say that about Nick Gage too, because he's thinking about brand identity. He's thinking about catchphrases, how to get the crowd involved and make them a part of it. And so these are guys that are at the very top of the food chain when it comes to death matches and even wrestling in general.
Yeah, for sure. And that's crazy, because when you watch the Countdown special, you definitely get a vibe that these are two very different men. I think Mike Johnson maybe encompassed it best when he was talking about how for the past like decade or so, Jon Moxley's been on this rocket ride to the top of the pro wrestling world, while Nick Gage has really gone through some serious hardships, prison time and like personal downfalls. It's cool to see Gage, like hear you talk about Gage on that level, because he just seems like a guy who's just so raw and about the craft. Like all he really wants to do is get in there and prove that this is what he does, deathmatch wrestling, better than anybody, no matter how popular you've been or how high on the mountain you've been, like a Jon Moxley, who he does have respect for, it would seem.
It's he is intense, and he brings a frightening aspect to the ring. But I was actually quite relieved and refreshed talking to him. I had a few hours to talk to him, and just seeing where his head is at. If you can believe it, I actually think he's in a really good place right now. And he's been careful to set up his business plan for his future and everything. And so he's I mean, the dark side of the ring, I mean, I think it ended with him saying like, I'm probably going to die soon and stuff like that. But like, I feel like some of that was kind of brought out of him. And, we all have good days and bad days, but like he is thinking longer term, and he's smart. But still, you better be ready when you get in the ring with him, because he's going to bring it,
Did you check out the Onita episode of Dark Side of the Ring?
Oh, that was just like, was that last week, or was that the? I didn't see that one yet.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw it out there while you brought up Dark Side of the Ring. I thought of you guys when I was watching it. Obviously, like some of the most insane stuff I've ever seen in that episode. So
I'm excited. Yeah, the last one I saw was the plane ride from hell. So I need to get caught up, but they're doing a phenomenal job. I was actually supposed to be in the Nick Gage one. It's too bad. They contacted me, but it was really difficult because of COVID. It was like last fall, I think nobody was vaccinated and traveling was so tough. And but yeah, I was supposed to be in that one. But I love what those guys are doing with that show. So. Yeah,
kind of dangerous to be talking so openly about some of these topics. I feel like somebody's going to wind up in a river or something here sooner than later if they keep talking like this. So a real death match. So back to the special, and you're working with Mox and Gage. I saw some photos. You took Gage to a prison to film for part of this for about an hour. Did I get that right?
That's right. Eastern State Penitentiary is it's a retired prison in Philadelphia, and it's visually just stunning. But I think Tuesday through Friday you can go there and tour the place, and it's cheap, inexpensively. Mondays they leave it closed for people who want to rent it for shoots or whatever. And so I talked them into letting me rent it for 1 hour, which was like, I think $500. That's all we could afford to put into it. And yeah, they kept like warning me ahead of time, like you should have somebody come scout because that hour is going to go quick. And I looked up some photos and I said, well, where is this? And they said, oh, that's cell block 7. And I said, okay, and where is this? And oh, that's cell block whatever. And I said, no, I'm good. I'm good. And we comfortably got our shots and got out of there. But like, it was funny because I brought Gage in there and he's like, oh man, I've always wanted to come here. And his girlfriend called him on the phone and she was like, I'm so jealous. I want to be there with you. And he's like, yeah, we'll come back. You should see it. And I just thought it was amusing that he actually liked hanging around there. But it probably doesn't feel anything like a current prison. It's just these high vaulted ceilings with, sun skylights. And I wanted to shoot during the day because if night would be more dramatic, but you'd have to light the place. And good grief, I couldn't do that in an hour, and that would be way too expensive. But yeah, that was a fantastic location to get.
Dude, that's pretty crazy that Nick Gage enjoys being in prison. He's like, no, this is great. This is a lot of fun for me, guys. So
that's the actual prison where Al Capone was held, and they've preserved his cell. And you would be surprised because if you have access to money, you can actually kind of doll up your cell. And he's got like an Oriental rug in there and like this nice like cabinet and a radio and a comfortable desk and chair and they took good care of him, and he'd just sit in there and chill and smoke his pipe or whatever and listen to the radio. And so,
wow, man, that's a once in a lifetime experience. I took Nick Gage to Al Capone's cell block, and we admired the Oriental rug. Wow.
I soaked it up, man. I was really glad to have that location.
So Nick, you really kind of, I see a lot of these now where talents get released and they'll go find a you or a Giancarlo. And they'll do these like what I'm calling exit videos, right? Where they get freed of WWE and they need to reestablish themselves. I think you and Mox were easily the start of that trend with that your own prison break video, oddly enough. Mm-hmm. Having, stayed close with Mox here since that prison break video, how do you think Moxley has kind of grown or changed over these last, about 2 years since he's been able to break away, from that WWE mold?
I think he's just so much more comfortable. I mean, he was doing, I believe, more than 250 shows a year at one point. I mean, averaging like 5 a week. And so he said what to me one time, obviously you get beat up, but the toughest part is just being in a seated position all the time, whether you're in a vehicle or on a plane. And just think of the travel. Oh, it's just brutal. Most of your life is just in a seated position, and so he has a lot more freedom. If he wants to say something on the mic, he can say it. And I mean, if he wants to show up in an indie show and wrestle Nick Gage in a legitimate death match, he can do it. And so just being able to choose there was a line that I didn't use in the edit, and he just said, I spent a lot of years just not getting what I want, just not getting satisfaction and just not being able to choose. And, this is what I want and I can choose it. And this is what I'm going after. So I think he's just living it up. A lot of guys aren't going to want to do death matches like this on a regular basis. And I certainly don't blame Moxley, but it is a rush. If you can pop in there and experience it and go back, like it's I can see how he's excited about this.
You talk about how a lot of guys don't want to do death matches. As a death match Hall of Famer here, what did you think about Matt Cardona briefly stepping a toe into death match wrestling and what he was able to do with Gage?
He showed up, man, and I'll tell you, I don't know if he's ever had more attention around his name. And it was like this, like, they knew that fans were going to riot at the end of that match when he won the title. But I think what they didn't expect is, well, they knew that the drinks were going to fly, but I think there was concern that it was going to be worse than that. But I believe, I know he won those fans over because, like, they're going to throw stuff because he won the title. But the fact that he didn't shy away from anything and he took everything, and, it was just a jaw-dropping performance. You have to give him a lot of credit. It's like, okay, some guys want to dip their toe in that world to get the notoriety. Like, I believe Effie, that's when he really blew up, is when he challenged Nick Gage and came in there and took his light tubes and his beating and everything. And that really kind of launched him onto a bigger stage. And so Cardona did that, but it's just like if you come in and you actually go through with it 100%, the fans really respect that. And so he sure won my respect.
Yeah, dude. And you're right about Effie too, man. That guy's tougher than a brick house. I don't the Gage stuff was rough. It's when G Raver like poured salt and vinegar potato chips on his back. I think that's chef's kiss. I was like, that's very painful, I would imagine.
I don't know why that was so funny to me. I was there that night, and he got in the back, and he was like, "Man, that hurt!" I was laughing so hard, and he's just looking at me like, I'm like, "Come on, that's pretty funny." Like, the salt and vinegar chips, like they suck because he really mashed him into his back, and so he felt it. He really felt it.
I felt it. We all felt it, you know. So earlier we talked a bit about deathmatch wrestling, kind of on a bigger stage, being more accepted. But man, we saw deathmatch wrestling in a way we've never seen with Gage on AEW Dynamite. What was your reaction to Tony Khan and AEW letting Gage and Jericho go out there and do, you know, something that was really violent on AEW Dynamite?
One of those things you can never imagine until you see it. And so, you know, it was a bit watered down, but like Gage taking that top rope Frankensteiner through the pane of glass, that was legit. And the pop, that I just love that moment. I kept watching that over and over. And so it was just one of those gifts, one of those things that you couldn't even imagine it until you see it. And so I loved that, and it got a lot more eyeballs on him, and so helped him with his merchandise and everything, I'm sure. And so I was so happy. When we shot in the prison, that was just 2 days before he faced Jericho, and so I got to kind of chat with him leading up to that. And yeah, he was calm and he was cool about it, and you know, saw it as a real opportunity, and it was. I don't know this, but I believe they might be doing a bit more of the, you know, hardcore stuff on Rampage on their new show, and so maybe you'll see Gage again. I don't know, but I believe they're going to do some more of that, and so. But I think all of us were just so happy to see him get that opportunity, you know?
Yeah, he got a big reaction. I could definitely see him bouncing into AEW like Eddie Kingston did, kind of caught everybody off guard and just won over everybody kind of immediately. I'd love to see kind of Gage filling a space like that. I think it'd be perfect for it. And like with you, Nick, working as closely as you do with Mox and, you know, Gage, who's got ties, like, you know, have you talked to AEW about you doing stuff more formally with them? Are they interested in doing more with you? Like, what's your relationship with AEW?
I worked for them up until the pandemic. Actually, I was working with a third-party company that does video work for them, but they had to cut back, and I lost my gig right around the time of the pandemic. But yeah, the first 5 months or so, I was full-time touring with them and doing promos and material for them. So yeah, I've already worked with AEW.
Oh, nice. Okay. All right. So you're just out on the, and you know, you become very popular. Are you doing a lot more independent wrestling stuff right now? Like what's on your plate right now, I guess is what I'm wondering.
I'm also dabbling in stunt work, which is very interesting to me. And do you know the show Heels with Stephen Amell?
Yes. I don't know. Here. Do I know the show Heels? Here's my Duffy Wrestling League Stars heel hat right there.
I want one. How come I didn't get one?
They talked to Punk or Amell, right? They gave him away. They did they aired Punk's episode here in Chicago. I sat like 3 seats away from him, watched the whole show.
Yeah, well, I was there for the whole first season, working on the stunt team. So, and you'll spot me a few times in the show. They actually let me wear my gimmick, my Nick Mondo gimmick, on the show. But yeah, I did. I was on the stunt team, and so I think there's going to be a season 2. I haven't gotten the confirmation, but I'm hearing some rumblings, and so I'm very eager to get back in there. But yeah, I was there for season 1. So
yeah, see, it's so much to watch. I watched up to the Punk episode, the 3rd episode, maybe 4th, and then I've just got to binge the rest of it now because I think the season premiere is about to come up. That's how I watch a lot of things now. But that's awesome. How was that working on Heels? Like, is this like the first of? Was this like your first big stuff project, or are you? I don't know how regular you do this kind of work. I don't know.
earned my SAG membership when I was living in Los Angeles. And then I moved to Atlanta 2 years ago. So I was just starting to get my stunt gigs in LA. The last Gears of War game, I did all the, it was brutal. We did all of the action, all of the stunts, everything within 2 days. Explosions, like reactions to explosions, and all the death scenes and everything. So yeah, it was not my first big stunt gig, but it was a really good time on the show. They built that whole arena that it looks like a warehouse, where they run the shows. That's all inside of a soundstage at Tyler Perry Studios. So you walk into the soundstage, and then there's another shell inside of that. They just constructed that whole area, it's just like a fake wrestling arena. They built the whole thing in there, and you've got like the office where the promoter sits and works through Stephen Amell and Mary McCormack, her character.
Sure.
They work in the office there, and you've got the locker room and sort of like the gym area. It's all in there, and I love seeing this stuff, and I believe they're gonna get into more death matches in season 2, and I've already thrown my name in the hat. Like, guys, give me some of that stuff, because just to see how they would pull that off with Hollywood effects would be so exciting. Just to see how they handle barbed wire and glass and blood and all that, and so I really want to take part in that if that happens.
Yeah, I can hear it in your voice. And like Chavo Guerrero's told me about how hard it is to film wrestling matches. Hey, we need you to do that bump again. Do that bump 20 more times, right? I can only imagine. Hey, why don't you blade again? No, glue them up. Now cut yourself again. I imagine it's that all day long.
It's funny because it's so much easier, but at the same time, it is a bit harder. Easier because it's like, okay, we're going to film a battle royal, and you're thinking like, okay, what are the spots going to be? But it's more like a 20-second shot. The camera's, tracking across, and in that 20 seconds, I'm getting choked, and then I get tossed out of the ring. Like, that was the battle royal. And I'm like, oh, really? But at the same time, if there are bumps involved, like Stevie Richards was there. I got to sit down and chat with him for the first time. Really like that guy.
Okay.
And we were in the back, and he was kind of wincing, and somebody's like, "You okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm just trying to eat this headache away." He kept eating. I don't know if that's a tactic for getting rid of a headache. But it's like, "What happened?" And he said, "Oh, it's just going hot, cold, hot, cold. Basically cold, like you're not warmed up." And all right, action. And there was a shot where this big muscular guy like powers everybody back, and Stevie had to just jump and take a big back bump. And your head usually bounces a little bit when you take those. And so if you're not warm, like if we're just waiting, okay, action, and then you do it, that can be a little bit rough, when you're not warmed up. But at the same time, it's usually just one quick bump and you're done, as opposed to you wrestle a full match and you're a stuntman you're an actor and you're a stuntman who's doing his own stunts. And we're talking like 30 to 50 stunts that you're executing in real time, And so I feel like stunt work is actually quite a bit easier than wrestling on your body. So
fair enough. I didn't know Stevie Richards was. I know Luke Hawx was in the mix as one of the guys. Wow, that's a lot of notable names that were working on that show. I didn't know
Luke Hawx sure was. He was the main wrestling coordinator, as a matter of fact, and his son Perry played the referee in the show. And together, like they're a really good team for training people, and so they trained the actors with wrestling, and so the actors have stunt doubles as well. But they had to learn all the basics, and Perry and Luke ran that, and Luke Gallows is in the show as well. And I need to watch. I think it got cut, but I got chucked out of a battle royal by him. We did about 6 takes, him just launching me out of the ring, and I think I saw the episode with that, and I think it didn't get in it because sometimes they just shoot a bunch of different action sequences and just grab what they want, But yeah, Luke Gallows is in it. He's a big dude, and he's a local Georgia guy as well.
All right, last thing I'll ask here, Nick. Mick Foley appears in Heels like you. Mick also appears in your Countdown special that you directed. You're obviously Deathmatch Hall of Famer, like we've said. Mick is a given Deathmatch Hall of Famer. Had you worked with Mick before? What was it like to get some time with Mick to sit him down and get his thoughts about deathmatch wrestling and what Gage and Mox are doing here?
Yeah, funny story. Like I was talking to Moxley about ideas on who we could bring in for this, and he said, "Yeah, I want to ask Foley." And I said, "Oh, please, yeah, by all means, ask him." And he got back, and Moxley texted me, and he said, "Yeah, Foley's in." And then he texted me again. "Oh, by the way, I told him your name is Mondo. Sorry," which I go by Nick Mondo anyway for credits and stuff like that. It doesn't matter, but it's really funny because I got in touch with Foley then, and like right away when I started talking to him, he's like, "So tell me this, like when is the date of the show?" And I told him, and he's like, and where's it going to be? And I'm like, "I think it's Atlantic City." This was like back in June maybe. And I'm like, can I ask why? Like, why are you asking? And he's like, "Well, I have an idea. Like, what if I special guest referee the match?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, obviously I'm pretty excited about that, but I'm not the promoter, so why don't I forward that to them? And so we just got to talking. Well, I'm not part of this conversation, but like I think it came around to how's this going to work best, and it'll have the same effect. I think if he just comes out and presents the world title, it's not necessarily like it's such a chaotic match. I don't know. It's not probably going to be like 1, 2, kick out, 1, 2, kick out. It's probably going to be just chaos. You know what I mean? And so,
Yeah.
But it was so cool. Like he's engaged and interested in these guys, and he knows about them, and just said like if it would add something, like I'd like to be a part of this. And so everybody was like, "This sounds phenomenal." And so you want to know what's funny? The way it worked out to shoot with him, we filmed with him in Long Island, New York. And he used to live there, but he was visiting his mom, and we coordinated and we were able to shoot there. But the place that I booked, it was like a cottage-style inn. I just wanted something with a more interesting background than just a typical hotel room, you know? But he showed up and he said, "This place was my first job." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, it was my first job I ever had. I was a dishwasher here in the kitchen." And people kind of started, like a couple employees were like, I just said, "Hey, we're shooting with an interview today." And, "Oh, can I ask who?" And when I mentioned Mick Foley, like the word kind of spread around. And then somebody said, like, when we were leaving, this guy was like, "My uncle, I was just talking to him. He said to apologize to you because on your first day, he almost dropped a knife on your hand." And Foley just laughed. And I was thinking, why would you remember something like that? But maybe it was like the knife fell and like stuck in a cutting board or something like that, you know? But it was just cool. Like you can see like the locals there really appreciate him. And this woman was walking through and spotted him, and she came up to me and she's like, "Is that Mick Foley?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "He came and visited my relative who had cancer in the hospital." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." And so she chatted with him, and he remembered, and he said, "I called the hospital and I tried to get her information, but they wouldn't give it to me." And this woman said, "Oh yeah, she recovered." And he's like, "Oh my gosh, give me her number. I want to call her and just tell her how happy I am for her." And so anyway, just to see that, like, genuinely good guy. He wants to give back. He wants to, you know, give Mox and Gage this extra little cherry on top. And like, it was so cool to see that, you know?
Yeah, dude, that's awesome, man. You know, they said, "Oh, meet your heroes," but like Mick is one of those guys that you actually can meet, and you're like, actually, I'm really glad I met my hero. He's like a pretty decent dude, you know? So anyway, that's always been my experience.
100%. Yeah.
All right. Well, Nick, I want to thank you so much. Definitely want to have you back down the road to talk some more. You do so much cool stuff in professional wrestling. But again, this Saturday night, October 9th, it's going down Atlantic City, the Showboat Casino. Is it a casino?
It's a hotel and casino, Showboat. Yeah, but you can watch it live on Fight TV, fight.tv.
Okay, cool. And I asked because it looks like a circus tent. It looks like where they keep the elephants or something inside that place.
It's the carousel room, they call it. And so I don't know if back in the day they had a carousel horse thing in the middle, but it really has a lot of character when you walk into that space. It's got a good vibe to it.